welcome to Friday Night Blitz on Livestream STL. We're live from Marquette High School in Chesterfield, Missouri, home to the Marquette Mustangs. Our matchup is between the Seckman Jaguars and the Marquette Mustangs. Ray Halbrook along with Mr. Matt Bates here. Going to have a fun one here, Matt.
9-1, both teams coming in.
Yes.
Playoff football. You have the Seckman Jaguars averaging about 51 points a game, and you have a Marquette defense giving up only 11.1
Absolutely.
points a game. So this is definitely going to be a tough test.
Well, game plan for us is to do what's got us here.
We live to fight another day, right?
No
Let's
doubt.
take care of business tonight and look forward to either CBC or Kirkwood, correct?
Playoff football, gotta love it.
There's going to be a lot of people coming through that front gate here in the next, hour, and it's going to be a great atmosphere on a Friday night between two very, very strong, powerful teams that are going to see who can move the line of scrimmage in their direction.
Here, offset eye. Rubel going to go straight up the gut. He's going to break it. He's going to go all the way to the end zone for a touchdown of 69 yards for Cole Rubel. Gun in it. I mean, because they can bring the points.
Yeah.
Quarterback keeper. Quarterback keeper. Allbrand breaks loose. He's all the way to the 20, to the 10, to the 15, 10, 5. Touchdown. 47-yard run for Jack Allbrand. Offense clicking, and it is at the 30-yard line. Allbrand going to keep it himself. He's going to go up 10, 5. Touchdown. Give him 6 on a 31-yard touchdown run by the quarterback, Jack Allbrand. These purple pants. Allbrand steps, drops back. He has Marsh all day open, and then some Marsh stiff arm. Touchdown, Marquette. Jack Allbrand to Gavin Marsh. Empty backfield. He takes it, calls his own number, and he dove into the end zone from 3 yards out. Jack Allbrand. Anderson comes in motion. They're going to give it up the gut to Justin Jackson, and he goes in for a 7-yard TD run. Looks like we have number 94 in there, and Cole Rubel's going to break it out over the 50 to the 40, cuts across to the grain, 30-20, 25-20, 15-10, 5, give him 6.
Imperial just south of Arnold.
Allbrand slices, dices, cuts around, dives in, and he's in from the 4-yard line. Officially make that a 4-yard TD run. The Marquette Mustangs at home do a number on the Seckman Jaguars, and Cole Rubel 42-14. Players are congratulating each other at midfield.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Upon Further Review. Ray Halbrook here, your host. Bringing my other hosts here in the middle there, Mr. Matt Bates, and on my right is Mr. Jeff Whitener. Gentlemen, week 11 is in the books, and how's everybody doing? Matt, you doing all right?
I'm doing about as fabulous as the Marquette Mustangs, my friend.
Hey, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing as great on a Monday into let's cut that right there because now it's going to be shown on Tuesday. Sorry,
that's okay. We'll keep that in as a non-edit on purpose, so because we do make mistakes.
Okay,
I'll make it on
There
the
you go.
bonus feature DVD.
Yeah.
everybody.
Take 2. Here we go.
That's right. I'm doing as great on a Tuesday as possible, Ray.
We're keeping all of that, I'm telling you, man. All right. Week 11 in the books, and we saw a really good game out at Marquette, 42-14 over Seckman. Unfortunately, the Seckman Jaguars season's over. Marquette will move on. They play CBC. Let me get that correct, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. But Marquette 42, Seckman 14. Matt was there. Matt, what do you think, my friend?
I think first and foremost, Jack Allbrand was everything as advertised from the quarterback standpoint.
Agreed.
Now, on the season has, just a shade under 2,000 in passing yards, 22 TDs, 6 INTs. But in that game, he went 11 for 19 with 215. But I think it was the rushing that really stood out for me. I mean, only 9 rushes, but for 130 yards, 4 TDs. Really, once they settled in with the passing game, allowed him to take off running roughshod like he did. Because I think I was just about as impressed by the offensive mentality as I was by the defense, led by number 11, Alex Bray at defensive end. On the graph that we had put up there at the beginning of the game and later on into the game, Marquette on the season averaged 35 points a game, allowed about 11. Seckman coming in, scoring about 51, allowing 21. So, I mean, with the score 42-14, Marquette pretty much did everything in the check boxes, if you will, to kind of say, okay, this is who they are, this is what they are. But when you had that second play from scrimmage and Rubel runs for 68 yards, if you're the defense now to maintain that 11-point average that you're giving up, you're telling me after the second play of the game, either there's like another touchdown or a field goal, and that's all you're giving up for almost 3 3/4 worth of football against a Seckman team. And when you saw the way Rubel went and torched for 7 TDs in the game prior, rushing for close to 300 yards, I think the defensive performance by Marquette stood out more to me in the way they were able to contain Rubel really more than anything.
Right.
I mean, with him having 231 yards on the night and 2 of those TD runs accounting for 131 of that, I mean, he had about 18 more carries and getting only, and I say only 100 yards, but that was an impressive job by Marquette and that staunch defensive line, because it seemed like once he blew for that first touchdown, Coach Stewart was just like, okay, we're going to put one more in the box, and that just seemed to be like, wash your hands of it, problem solved. And until Rubel busted out that one other touchdown near the end, I mean, that just seemed to be the only snafu on the defensive side of the ball.
Jeff?
Matt, you're absolutely right in that analysis. It's funny that you said Cole Rubel gained 230 some odd yards, and you look at that on paper and you go, wow, that's a great game for any player on the offense. But then you look at it and you go, well, wait a minute, there were 2 runs there that were long runs, but the rest of the time they did a great job of containing him. And it's that old adage, we can't stop a player. We can only hope to contain him, and that's exactly what Marquette did. And by containing Rubel most 90% of the game, they were able to stop everything else that they did. And as you said, Alex Bray, A Train, he was everything that was that they hyped about. He lived up to everything, all the expectations. And I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, he was named the Suburban Gold Conference Defensive Player of the Year, and deservedly so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Congratulations to him, by the way, as well. And my take on the whole thing, I mean, when you can contain Cole Rubel, especially with the setups and the different schemes, it doesn't seem like it's anything special, but it really is to say, hey, I've got this quarterback that's basically a running back converted and can do what he's done all season long, and only be able to get stopped by 2 teams all season long. Was a great feat for Cole, but at the same time, Marquette, just a big testament on them just doing what they've been doing as well all season. So good game there. Hey, we are here with Coach Mike Stewart, along with Jack Albrand and Alex Bray. Those guys are going to be our players of the week, but we're going to get to you, Coach, first. Coach Mike Stewart, man, you guys had an amazing game last night. Great preparation. We've seen Seckman a couple of games already this season, and Cole Rubel's a tough one to stop, but somehow you guys had a great plan and a great scheme to put in place. And take us through the game there, Coach.
Yeah, kind of start to finish. I think as a defensive coordinator myself, we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't preparing for Cole Rugel the entire week. We knew that their offensive line was big, strong, and that line of scrimmage was going to dictate how the entire game went. And so defensively, we gave up that early one. We made a few tweaks to some alignments, to some shades, and start to move some techniques around. We started to allow Alex and some of our other D linemen to kind of work through the double teams that they were getting. And so they did a really great job of pursuing the football. I'd also like to remark that our secondary did an outstanding job of filling the alley against him. And I think that's something that we brought to the table that they hadn't seen the entire year, was
Right.
that outer edge where Cole was able to rip a lot of those long runs down the sideline that, it doesn't matter if our kids are 150, 160 pounds there in the secondary. They were hitting low, and they were able to get them to the ground pretty quickly. Offensively, it all starts up front, and it starts with our running game. If we can open that up, then it's going to allow us to take some shots down the field, which we were able to do. We pride ourselves in our running quarterback too. He can throw the ball, but he can also scoot up and down the field when he needs to. And he wanted to show off his legs last night, and so he was able to do that with the 4 touchdowns that he punched in there. So we're really pleased with our D line and our defense as a whole by keeping that standard of keeping them under that 20-point mark, and then also the way our offense stepped up and was able to put together sustainable drives. And the third thing I'd like to remark on is how I felt really strongly about our special teams play the entire night. We didn't make any mistakes. We didn't put ourselves in a bad position. And every time that we put the ball back into Seckman's hands, it was usually when they were back on their own 20 or 30, and they were going to have to drive the entire length of the field. So that gave our defense a lot of confidence to be able to, to get the ball back to the offense so that they can do what we believe in them.
Absolutely. The thing that impressed me the most about last night's game was the quick adjustments that you guys made after Cole Rugel scores the first touchdown. He scored. He's like that and does that often and early and often. The earlier the better for him. You let him by the one time, but you made the adjustment, and he did have one later, but it didn't at that point. The score was too far away. It was just completely out of reach. So kudos to you guys on the adjustments, and take us through those adjustments that maybe you said right there after he scored that touchdown.
Well, we felt okay. Nobody wants to give up a 60, 70-yard run that early in the game, but we felt like we were okay because we over pursued it. Right? We created a seam on the backside because we were so kind of geeked up in the moment to chase him down to the sideline. So we knew if we kind of slowed our linebackers down a little bit, we actually started Alex and our other defensive ends. We started Alex in a 5. He was taking on a double, and he was getting cut a ton, and so we moved him to that inside shade of that tight end. And then by the end of the game, he was head up on that tight end because we were really just allowing our defensive linemen to all two-gap at that point because they were getting such a good push. And so that really freed up Alex to be able to chase stuff down and to help bottle it up. And our biggest thing was that we really wanted Cole to make a cut in the backfield. We felt like if we could get him to make a cut and flatten it out, that we could pursue the ball. But if he's getting downhill at 3 yards and hasn't made a cut yet, you're in some trouble, and he's going to take one for a long run.
Right. Well, you've got CBC for the district championship here. What's the game plan going forward?
We've played them in years past, and I think the big thing is that we've got to win up front again, right? That's huge for us. We have to win up front. We have to be able to, we've got to be able to pursue the football. We know they're full of talent, but we feel more strongly about this defense and this offense than we've ever put forward here at Marquette High School. So we're really excited that those young men get the opportunity to play in the district final. It's something that we've talked about all year. It's something these guys have wanted a shot at. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to go up to CBC and to show them what we have here at Marquette.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations on the win last night, and good luck to you next week. Appreciate the time being with us here. And we're going to switch over here. Normally I cut this right here, but I won't today. We'll roll straight into our players of the week. Jack Albrown, we're going to start with you, Jack. Jack, I've got you down 4 rushing touchdowns. You did a kind of a Cole Rubel reversal here. We're so used to seeing that down the way because we cover him a little bit more. But an amazing performance there. 4 rushing touchdowns. Passing not so bad as well there. 11 of 19, 215 yards, 1 touchdown. Jack, rate your performance there last night. Take us through the game a little bit.
So kind of really expecting our offense to show out last night. It was a really big part of the game. Talked about it all week. We had to show up. And then, of course, Cole Rubel on the other side. I mean, he's a great runner. He's a good quarterback. And normally he's been doing his thing throughout the weeks, putting points on everyone else, putting 50 bombs on people. And it was just nice to come out there and kind of show what I can do, a little head-to-head quarterback action. Line did a great job blocking. It's really coming together up front there. And then, of course, Gavin hauling in that big one for the touchdown. And then Tyree had that deep pass, but couldn't get it in. Got brought down on the 1, but he did a good job too.
I will say that pass was a sweet-looking pass. Man, I would have loved to have caught something that easy right in the breadbasket. So, kudos to the passing there. It looks like you hook up with that guy a little bit.
Yeah, we've been playing since 7th grade, so spend a lot of time with him. We're best friends, hang out all the time after school, on weekends and everything. So
sure, absolutely. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about college. We kind of talked a little bit here beforehand. You said you're getting looked at by a few schools. Maybe take us through those schools that you're maybe being looked at.
I've gotten some looks from like Ball State and Eastern Illinois a little bit, and then some D3s a lot, and then a couple D2s. Nothing crazy, but just some attention.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the time and congrats on the win. I'm going to jump over here to Alex. Alex, on the opposite side of the ball there, defensively, you have 50 tackles, and almost half of those are for a loss. So, and we'll get into a little bit of your college background because we already know where you're going. But your thoughts on last night's game.
Defensively, up front, the lines got a good push, and it helped our linebackers and our safeties and corners to be able to fill the gaps. And we really stretched them out. And I feel like we did a pretty good job. We had a couple, bad plays, but we got it back together later on. Absolutely.
We caught up with you. I know you kind of saw us out of the corner of your eye there during pregame, and I'll tell you the intensity and the amount of just the importance to the details. You don't take any of those details, for granted. So it was a treat to see that on the field last night, and I saw that, and man, just wanted to say keep that up because that's very, very important. The details, the small details, even they pay dividends in the end. So saw that. We'll talk about your commit. You've committed to Illinois. How did that come about?
I went to a camp during the summer, and they really liked the way I did, and so they're gonna look over me. They were looking over me during the first couple games, and they saw that I did good, and they gave me an offer, and it was too good to pass up. So it's close to home, and I love the facilities. I love the coaches. They're very talkable. I talk to the D-line coach every day, so we have a really good connection right now.
Awesome, and that means a lot there for a D coach to be calling you all the time. So kudos to the commitment there to Illinois, and guys, we appreciate being here, part of this. Coach Mike Stewart and Jack Albrown and Alex Bray, players of the week. Thanks again, and congrats on the win this week.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And I'd also like to say that we appreciate you guys recognizing St. Louis High School athletics. We think it's a really important role that you guys do in being able to help kind of put our players out there and get them the attention that they deserve. So we appreciate on your end, your guys' sacrifice on Friday nights to be able to give our kids the attention they deserve.
No, we appreciate that, and that means a lot to us. And thanks again for being on today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to our next game. That will be the Park Hill Central Rebels 35 and the St. Genevieve Dragons nothing.
All I got to say about this, the winner plays Valley, and I'll touch more on that later on.
Yeah. Jeff?
Park Hill's Class 3, they've dominated that class for quite a while, and they showed why. They really, on both sides of the ball, offense and defensive line, just manhandled St. Genevieve in that game, unfortunately. But yeah, now they have Valley in that same district. So Park Hills is used to having a lot of success in that Class 3 in a lot of sports, and now they have to contend with someone who they know pretty well over there. They're not that far apart from one another. In fact, some of the kids from Park Hills, have played over at in St. John and Valley and back and forth. So the familiarity there. But it's going to be an uphill battle next week, and we'll talk about that a little more later.
Agreed. Real quick, we'll touch on this real quick, and then we'll move ahead here. A win here by Valley of St. John, and then they move on and make a deep run. Do they move up another class next year?
Jeff, that was something we had talked about in the broadcast, and I don't know if you've got more insight to share on this, but when a team gets, like in this case here, where Valley gets bumped up from Class 1 to Class 3, is there a specified amount of time they've got to stay at a class level before they can get moved up?
No, that gets rearranged every single year by Misha, and there's a formula out there, and it's a complicated, convoluted formula that deals with the fact that your past successes plus your private school, there's an extra multiplier for that. In my opinion, yes, they move up to Class 4. I don't see them. I think they can move up to Class 4 very successfully and dominate most teams in that class, at least in our area. But I don't see them moving up to Class 5. I think that would be quite a stretch for them. And I think if you get them to Class 5, then they're going to start running into some trouble. But we'll see. I'd be very, very shocked if Misha moved into 5.
I'd move to 5.
Let's touch on that as we get to the round 2, because that's some stuff I've got here when we talk about the next round coming up. So let's, because I got some interesting stuff I want to pick up on the second round there, and I guess afterwards as well. So
okay, perfect.
Because I like where that's going.
Awesome. Okay, moving on. Hillsboro 57, Farmington 0.
Well, this was a romaine salad and a PB sandwich once again. Good Lord, 35 collective carries, 600 yards rushing. Let me repeat that again, 600 yards rushing. They had 5 yards passing, by the way, but averaging 17 yards a carry. At least I'd seen Austin Romaine had 2 TDs, 70-40, so 110 yards on 2 TDs, and he only had 7 collective carries for 204, which leaves 5 carries for another 94 yards. And the Browns, Peyton and Preston, they torched 7 carries, 119. Preston 4 for 57. This was just line them up, run the ball, stop me. You can't. I'm going to keep running it. You still can't stop me. 57-0. Impressive. And
as you said, Matt, they only attempted 1 pass in that game, and even that pass was successful for 5 yards. It's here again. Okay, so we're talking about both the Browns. We're talking about Jackson Patterson. We're talking about Austin Romaine. We know those 4 are great players. But what is getting lost in all of this is the fact that they don't do anything without the offensive scheme and the blocking up front that the Hillsboro Hawks provide. And these guys could make some yards on their own, but when you're talking that kind of dominance, you've got a blocking scheme, and that you've got the guys up front who are working so well together as a cohesive unit. And that's the beauty of it. And as an old O-lineman, that's the thing I love to watch the most.
I totally agree with you, Jeff, and being a former offensive, defensive lineman myself. I mean, that's the other thing I can appreciate is when you look at some of these schools and some of their collective winning efforts, it's because the front lines had at least 2-3 years at the varsity level together, to where when you look at some of these teams, let's say like a Bishop DeBerg that has like one senior on the offensive line and everybody else is sophomores, freshmen, to where you're not able to get like a cohesive unit to at least get your building blocks established. We go from there, then we work out from that. And I think you see that with those teams that are able to get that ground and pound game. It starts with that trust and that continuity that I guess you would say we have as a collective front line unit. Then we go from there.
There you go. All right, moving on to the next game here. Cape Central 25, Oakville 12. That was a little bit of a upset, so to speak.
I mean, the game, I mean, when you look at the score and how Oakville got basically doubled up for all intents and purposes, I mean, this was 12-6 to start the fourth quarter. So, I mean, this was a game that was hard fought. And really, it was like, who's going to get the next touchdown? Because if you make it 18-6, that probably would have felt like 50-6. But if you can put one in on the Oakville side, knot this thing up at 12, then maybe, go for one or two afterwards. But, 163 total yards of offense, 137 rushing, like 26 passing. That makes a tough day at the office on the Oakville Tiger side. Nash Moore, 62 yards, Ethan Venable, 31 yards on the ground. Oakville goes to 6-5, Cape Central goes to 8-3, and they play Poplar Bluff.
And we'll talk a little bit about that matchup here in a second. I want to touch on that too, because that was a very interesting set of events down there in the southeast Missouri. But want to get back to Oakville. They can hold their heads high. Great season for head coach Mike Ginge over at Oakville. They're definitely a team that's trending upward. And although they're going to lose a few players, that they've got Ethan Venable returning next year, senior. This was his first year at running back. So to come in and do the job that he did, I thought was outstanding. And I think the future is looking bright for Oakville. But I just want to briefly touch on this. Cape Central will play Poplar Bluff for the championship. Wow. Because Poplar Bluff upends Jackson 21-20 at Jackson and snapped their I think it was a 5 or 6 year district title streak at Jackson. So that was probably the biggest upset of the night, at least on this side of the state, guys.
How about that?
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Jeff.
All right, and we'll talk about the Big Valley Catholic Warriors there, their big win over Kennett 58-6.
Just so it doesn't go unnoticed, Kennett led this game 6-0, and then Valley happened, and they reeled off 58 consecutive. And back to what we were talking about, Valley at Class 3, their first win of the season came against Class 6 Seckman, 61-36, and that was the most points that Valley's given up all year. They're averaging 56 points a game scoring, and they're only allowing about 14 plus-ish. They've beaten a Class 4 Festus team 48-20. They've done their damage through their Class 3 opponents. And, because they were Class 1 at one point, they played St. Vincent, Class 1. They demolished them 67-7. But then they also played another Class 6 team again, Vianney. They destroyed them 49-8. And then the last week of the season and in their first round game, which was technically in the second, they played Kennett twice and beat them collectively 106-22.
Ouch.
As we have talked about, though, during since the playoffs started, that mentality that the coaches have where they have this fear, this bugaboo of playing the same team twice. Well, this round 3 game is going to pit Valley against Park Hills, and this will be the second time they've played them. Park Hills, when they played them, they beat them 40-30. That was the fewest points in any game that Valley had scored all year, and only a 10-point margin, which was also the tightest game they had played all year. So if I'm Valley, that's definitely a highlighted game to where, I think playing a team a second time, I mean, on paper, Valley's probably going to do what Valley does, but this is one I would kind of highlight, that if Park Hills sees enough film, makes enough adjustments, they could probably make this a tough day for Valley Catholic, or at least make it one of their other toughest games of the year, Jeff.
And because of that, Matt, I think that Valley Catholic will use that for motivation. And they're going to say, Park Hill scored 30 points against us last game. We're not going to let that happen again. I think they're going to be extra motivated to come out and try to dominate Park Hills, because that's just the way the mentality down there works, and how Judd Nager fires up that and motivates that team. I hope and pray that this is a close game, a physical game, but I just have a feeling Valley Catholic's going to come out and say, we didn't play our best this first game. We want to show these guys what we can really do.
There you go. All right, our next game here, Charleston 42, St. Vincent 24.
I'll defer this one to Mr. Jeff.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt, because that was one of two of my upset specials that I called correctly last week. So, yes, I am going to pat myself on the back for that one. Charleston, too big, physical, and fast for St. Vincent. They dominated on both sides of the ball. Charleston scored 42 consecutive points in that game against the Indians. They did not have an answer at all for Charleston's speed. And Charleston's an up-and-coming team. And it was one of these deals where St. Vincent's had a rough way to go the last few weeks. They lost to Jefferson. They won last week, but you could tell that there's some things about their game that had been exposed a little bit, and Charleston took full advantage of that.
All right, moving on here. Duchesne 55, St. Pius X, nothing. Kind of a pound there.
This was a game that right from the get-go, Duchesne, they hit for the cycle on special teams and defense. They returned the opening kickoff 90 yards, so there was game over already there with that 7-0 score. But then they have a fumble recovery in the end zone. They block a punt for a TD. They have a pick six. At the end of the first quarter, this game was 34-0, and that's a punch in the kisser that even if you took the foot off the gas, that's a lot of damage that's got to be collected and regained. And really, there is nothing that Duchesne in those 4 possessions, they didn't have to do anything on the offensive side of the ball. But when you look at what they did collectively, 35 yards of rushing, 43 yards of passing, and 3 interceptions. 78 yards, 3 interceptions. That was St. Pius's offensive day at the office against this Duchesne team. That made for a very tough road to hoe for 4 quarters.
Well, just to expound on that a little bit, Matt, Duchesne actually scored 3 touchdowns on the first 4 plays of the game. They run the kickoff back 90 yards. Then on the ensuing kickoff, St. Pius fumbles. They recover that for the touchdown. They kick off again on the very first play from scrimmage. St. Pius fumbles. They recover that, and then they get the touchdown run. So you find yourself down 21-0 with 2 minutes into the game, and from there, if you're a defensive lineman on Duchesne, you just pin your ears back because they're going to have to throw the ball. So you start taking risks. You see more turnovers happen. It just snowballs from there. And there wasn't a whole lot the Lancers could do at that point.
Absolutely. Moving on. Festus 28, North County 15. This was another upset special there, Jeff Whitener.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Armad Branch went off in this game. There's something that Coach Ofodile saw in the North County defense, and granted, North County banged up a little bit in their secondary, and they took full advantage of that. Armad Branch, is probably one of the best wide receivers in our area. 3 touchdowns, 180 yards receiving. That was all in the first half for Branch, and there's definitely a situation where in this particular game, you play a team twice one team is trending upward in Festus and what they've been able to do as the season progresses. North County's banged up. They've had last 2 or 3 games have been rougher for them, and great credit to Coach O and his staff for finding those holes in the Raider defense and exploiting them to full advantage.
Yeah, I mean, when you hold Job Smith to 20 carries, 142 yards, and 2 TDs, I mean that was almost comparable to that modest Cole Rubel performance as well against Marquette. But credit the defense. Eli Ortman, 11 collective tackles, 10 solo and assists, 3 sacks, 8 sacks total for that defense. So that offensive line for North County must have been either a patchwork deal or they were stacking the box. And when they went to go to passing formations, Coach O must have had blitzes or something dialed up, because eight sacks in one game that was an impressive number that stood out for me on the defensive side. And you're talking a Festus team that's now 4-1 in their last 5 games. And I think that one wake-up call when Jackson beat them 52-0 was just kind of like, okay, collective regroup, off we go again. And now you see the fight that they're going to have now against Hillsborough in this what I call Jefferson County championship game now at the Class 4 level.
Yeah, Matt, and I just want to circle back real quick if I could, because I can't say enough about Armad Branch, and Ray and I have watched this young man play, and certainly we've seen him on the basketball court since his freshman year, and we know what a dynamic athlete he is. And Festus doesn't post their stats publicly, but I know that on the season he has 874 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns, which would put him right in the top 5 or 6 in the whole metro area. And I know that this young man wants to play football at the next level. He's certainly capable of playing football or basketball. He's that dynamic of an athlete. But as Ray likes to say, somebody better come snatch this young man up.
Come get him. Come get him. He's a heck of a ball player. We're catching up here with Coach A.J. Ofodile from the Festus Tigers. Coach, big win over North County, 28-15. Great games out of Jeremiah Cunningham, your quarterback. 2 touchdowns, both those to Armad Branch. Armad Branch, only 3 receptions, though, 176 yards. Hey, when you got a guy that can average 58 yards a reception, that's not a bad day. Take us through the game a little bit there, Coach.
Well, actually, both of our QBs actually had really good games for us. They both threw 2 touchdown passes, and then Etienne also ran for about 70 yards as well. A lot of that just being creative with his feet and scrambling and making some plays. And so both those guys, Jeremiah and Etienne, have both had really quality years for us. As far as this week, we were kind of surprised. Their approach to us was to line up and play man. And Armad all year has seen a bunch of double teams and a lot of different creative ways to try to keep him from making big plays. And so, North County being a team that has some really good kids athletically, especially on the back end, I think, they said, hey, let's line up, let's bottle the run game up, and let's play man. And so it gave us some opportunities to throw the ball downfield that we haven't really had all year, and we were lucky enough to capitalize on them.
Big game out of your defense as well. 8 sacks on the game, and elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, our defense has really played well as of late. We after our first Hillsborough game, we kind of reined everything in and looked at what we were doing and the positives and negatives and what we needed to do going forward. And Coach Bidlack overhauled our whole defensive system. Early on, just getting used to doing something different was challenging, but our kids bought into it. And each week we've gotten a little bit better and a little bit more confident. This was kind of, probably our best defensive performance against a really explosive offensive team. You mentioned 8 sacks. You'll never really stop Job Smith, but if you can limit him and make sure he doesn't get 70, 80-yard runs, then you got a chance to be successful against those guys. And they were able to do that. And that was our game plan coming in.
Absolutely. You talk about the difference in maybe the first half of the season and the second half of the season here. Things kind of inconsistent, still trying to tweak a lot of stuff. What have you found out has worked and has been part of the success of the second half of the season?
on both sides of the ball is just really analyzing what we've been doing and, what we're good at. There's a big difference a lot of times between what you want to be good at and what you're actually good at. And, us as coaches, we have all these things schematically that are great on paper and we want to do them and we want to try to implement them and they'll give us an advantage if we can get them done. And then the reality is sometimes you find out through trial and error that you're just not good at some of those things. And sometimes from year to year it changes. This group of kids was good at this concept and this one isn't. So I know definitely in our run game we've kind of overhauled and really eliminated some of the things that we were trying to do that weren't as effective and really kind of relied heavily on the things that we were most productive in. And the same thing defensively is, just cut back on some of the scheme and just emphasize the things that we execute well.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the district championship game coming up this Friday here out at Hillsboro at Leon Parkway. Maybe give us a key or two that you think is the biggest part of the game that's going to be the key to your success.
Our first game, where we really struggled on the defensive side of the ball is tackling. There were a lot of times that we were in decent position to make a play and just didn't get it done. So, that's got to be a point of emphasis for us. And it's obviously easier said than done with the people that they have carrying the football. But, if we're more accurate tackling, getting more hats to the ball, playing team defense, being sound, all those cliche coaching things, then we'll have a chance to maybe limit them a little bit more than we did the last time, which, is not saying much. They kind of ran all over us and had their way that first time. And then offensively, we moved the ball pretty well, but, we had turnovers and miscues and penalties and things that derailed drives. And, when we were in our rhythm and didn't have those things, we moved it pretty well. So, we got to figure out a way to do that again. And again, once just is not as easy as it sounds. They have excellent personnel on defense, rangy guys that fly around and make plays and play hard like you want them to. They're good tacklers. And so, we have to be really creative in terms of figuring out ways to get the ball moved downfield again. I thought we had a pretty good plan the first time and, just didn't quite get it done like what we needed to. And, hopefully we'll come up with another good one.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, we appreciate the time and good luck to you this week, and we'll see you down the road.
I appreciate it.
That's Coach A.J. Ofodile from the Festus Tigers. All right. U-City 20, Herculaneum 14. Closer game than I thought might have been because, U-City, they had a little bit of a tougher schedule. But thoughts on that, Matt?
Well, Herky was up 14-6 at the half, so you knew that, that this was not going to be an easy day with the lunch they were packing. U-City scored that TD with 2:18 left in the fourth to break a 14-14 tie. Maloney, 29 carries, 95 yards, did what he could do to try to, keep the damage to a minimum. Jackson Deering was 6 of 17 for 47 yards. So as we were talking off camera, I hadn't seen any numbers or any stat lines for Mr. Barr, which led us to believe he must have been hurt because my prior math had been, if Barr doesn't collect 100 yards passing or receiving, usually equates to a Herky loss, which in this case that happened. And we believe, Jeff, if you want to elaborate a little bit too, that we don't believe he played because of a possible injury, correct?
Right. I think Lucas Barr probably didn't play or was extremely limited in this game. He's been nursing a groin injury, which, as you know, as a former athlete, that's very hard to heal, very difficult. All you can pretty much do is rest it. And I know that the Herculaneum Black Cats and Coach Boss would never make an excuse. I'm going to make a little one for him. If you have a healthy Lucas Barr in this game, I think they can jump up and beat U-City in this game, even at U-City. And I think that that might have been a difference maker.
Yeah, I agree with that very much. So he did not play, by the way. He was out with that growing injury. Just checking up on stats here as well. Mike Maloney had a heck of a game there. 29 rushes, 95 yards. not 100 yards, but close. And then the big game, big part of the game, I saw a 10-yard pass from Dylan Jarvis to Jackson Deering. So that was kind of an interesting. I would have loved to have seen that particular play, but Herky's had a great season. They came out of the chute, 2, 3, 4 games in a row, and then they hit that middle season. You were dealing with some injuries here and there, but it's got to be next man up, and I think that's the MO for next year for Coach Boss, and being able to instill that into his Black Cats that they've got the ability to be the next guy up, and that's your job, and so I think that's the next step for them. Moving in to our next game here, Eureka 32. Parkway West 7.
The Kevin Emanuel show continues. 39 carries, 282 yards, averaging about 7.5 a pop, 4 TDs. This was another game though, 13-7 at the half, and you kind of have to give a little bit of pause. And when you look at Parkway West though, 51 yards rushing, 69 yards passing, only 120 collective yards of offense. You kind of just wonder, this is another one of these games where you talk about maybe halftime being the best thing or the worst thing to happen to a team. And I would say something collectively happened where Coach Sumner at halftime their staff must have figured something out, because they just stuck to their plan, kept running Emmanuel, and something must have happened with the Parkway West defense, because they apparently had no answer the rest of the way.
Matt, you touched on that there, some of the halftime adjustments that a team can make. It's my opinion that, a coaching staff, they can look at film and they can prepare their team to face their opponents for the week. But until you get to that game and kickoff, you never know what the opponents are going to throw at you. So it's many times the best way that a coach can affect the game while the game's going on are those halftime adjustments and what they've seen. And Eureka's proven time and again that this year that they can do that and come out strong in the second half. But you have to couple that with the fact that, in my opinion, more than any other team that I've seen this year, Eureka physically just grinds down their opponent as the game goes on. And, how many times are you going to try to tackle Kevin Emanuel after getting knocked around by that offensive line? And he's going to make you hurt and think about it every time you hit him, and every time you try to bring him down, you're going to pay a price. And it mentally and physically wears down a defense as the game moves on.
Absolutely. Our final game here, CBC 41, Kirkwood 3.
Well, the Cadets just laid one on the Pioneers in this game. When you look at Kirkwood, 184 collective total yards. When you look at just some comparable teams that Kirkwood had played at that Class 6, they lost to Eureka 31-30. And another common opponent, they lost to Marquette 20-17. So the Pioneers, ending the season 6-4, wasn't just like they played a bunch of cream puffs and the 4 losses were, to marginal teams. Losing by 1 to Eureka and losing by a field goal to Marquette. This was a Kirkwood Pioneer team that they tried to stand up to CBC, but only 350 yards of offense for CBC, but they did a lot of damage in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's CBC is doing CBC things. Kirkwood, kind of a down season for them compared to where they have been the last few years. They've been pretty dominant as far as public schools go, but a little changeover in personnel right now, and as you said, they play a very tough schedule, though. So 6-4 with the schedule they have is nothing to sneeze at, guys. But CBC, it's cliche, but just too many weapons.
And we're back here. We're going to go through our Week 12 matchups here. Not as many teams now that we've had. Probably close to more than half of the entire state eliminated here. So We'll start with our live stream STL Friday Night Blitz game of the week here. It's going to be MICDS taking on Eureka. Matt.
This is going to be fun. Country Day, MICDS, Marion Carnett Country Day School. Common opponents, I mean, they beat Duchesne 44-33. They beat John Burroughs 44-3. And their only loss, though, was to Class 3 Lutheran North 34-18. To put the only blemish on Country Day's 10-1 season. Eureka 9-1. Their only loss was to a 7-4 Lafayette team, 20-13. But I think this is just going to come down to seeing if there's a defense that's going to be able to corral and contain Kevin Emanuel. And we saw this in, like I said, some of the holy trinity of running backs up north with Job Smith, Emanuel, Cole Rubel. You saw Marquette able to do what they did with Cole Rubel, so it's going to be up to the Rams to see if they can contain Kevin Emanuel and this Eureka offense.
Well, Matt, and really you've got a matchup between two dynamic players in Kevin Emanuel, 188 points on the season, 31 touchdowns, versus MICDS's Winston Moore, also 31 touchdowns, 190 points on the season. So two players almost evenly matched in that regard. I tell you what, guys, this game ought to be sponsored by Johnson & Johnson because this is going to be, there's going to be plenty of Band-Aids handed out in this game.
Yeah.
This is going to be a physical game. Make sure the ice machine's loaded up ahead of time and start wrapping those bags because I think both teams are going to need it. I think this is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. And I think that, we haven't seen MICDS play on our air. I've seen them play a little bit, but we know what Eureka is capable of do from a physical standpoint. And I think this one's going to be a close one, and I think everyone's going to get their money's worth out of this one.
I agree with you, Jeff. And they also have another back, Stephen Hall, who has 188 points as well. So Kevin Emanuel's tucked inside a little MICDS Oreo cookie sandwich there, if you will, as far as points go. This is going to be a nice one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at there, Matt. Cole Rubel, number one, 292 points. We say enough about Cole Rubel. Winston Moore, 190 points for MICDS. He's second. Kevin Emanuel, 188 points. He's third. Stephen Hall, 188 points. He's fourth. Job Smith, he's fifth with 182 points. We've covered all five of those guys this year, so that's a pretty good treat. We don't get that every year like that, where you've got the the top point getters from the area here. So should be a fun one, but it'd be really interesting to see how Eureka is going to be able to counter with not just having to deal with Moore, but also Stephen Hall together, and that's the important part for Eureka. They've got double trouble to deal with. Moving on to our next game here, Marquette at CBC.
Well, after seeing Marquette finally with what they have to bring to the table, I think this is just going to come back down to their defense and that 11 points a game. To me, that's the huge number that I have circled for Marquette. I think that is going to be the end-all, be-all, that when you see a CBC team that's averaging 48 points a game, they come in basically with the same pedigree as what Second came in with, putting up, averaging 48 points a game. They've got four kids that have 50 points. They've got a kicker that has 48. All their numbers, they've beat Sluice 63-35. They've beat Vianney twice, and their only losses have been to the East St. Louis Flyers 64-19. And they've got three rushers that have over 600 yards apiece. So, when your only loss is to the Flyers, that's saying something as well. And this is going to be a staunch test for Marquette and that Mustang defense.
The only thing I have to say about this one is I talked about in the previous segment, CBC, too many weapons. Too many weapons, and then they can spread the ball. Whether it's your receivers, whether it's your backs, whether it's your quarterback, there's too many weapons. And as great as the season Marquette has had, and they should be applauded for having that season, man, it's going to be an uphill battle for them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking a look at the stats as well. There's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 players in double digits in points, for CBC here. So, you've got you're not just stopping 1 or 2 guys. You got to stop 6 or 7, and that's too many weapons to deal with there. Park Hill Central taking on Valley Catholic. We've said a lot about this, but final thoughts, I guess, before we see this matchup.
All I can say is second time seeing Valley, and I know what the coaches speak is when they say about facing a team a second time. So it's going to be interesting to see what adjustments are made by both sides. Does Valley just go wash, rinse, repeat, or does Park Hills finally see something when the chips are on the table now? This second time they're seeing them, and if they do they expose that and maybe able to sneak one out?
Well, I'm hoping that is the case, and I'm hoping that it's a close game, Matt. My heart wants it to be a close, entertaining game for all of the fans that are going to attend or watch that one. But my brain is just saying, man, it's Valley Catholic, and they're going to come out and do Valley Catholic things.
I get it. I agree with that. And same thing here for this next game here. U City and Cardinal Ritter. Cardinal Ritter have been pretty dominant all season long.
I think this is just going to be U City at 6-5, just hoping somebody throws them like a life preserver. Cardinal Ritter, they beat SLU 44-0. This is the team that has, Hillsboro's only defeat chalked up for them. They beat them 26-13 in that slugfest at the Hawk Nest. U City, this is a team, they've lost to Seckman 69-6, and another common opponent. They beat Herky 20-14. They've got a quarterback that's thrown over 1,600 yards, and they've got 3 wide receivers that have 400 plus. So, the only saving grace might be is if the Bombers can air it out, and Ritter may not be ready for an aerial attack. That might be U City's only saving grace. But if Ritter does what Ritter does, it's going to be a tough go for the Bombers in this one.
Matt, as you said, if you're U City, you're hoping that U City has to play mistake-free, turnover-free football. You're hoping to catch a break from Cardinal Ritter, maybe a fumble, maybe they're penalized. You take advantage of that. But we talked a little bit about Valley Catholic in the last segment and the possibility of them moving up classes. Here's another team, Cardinal Ritter, where if they have a deep run into the state playoffs this year, and I expect them to, they may very well move up Class 4, because they've shown this year that they can certainly compete, and in some cases, pretty well dominate some Class 4 teams.
And Jeff, that's where I was going to circle back with here, that when we talk about Valley and Cardinal Ritter, that once you start talking about, say, like Valley moving up in classes, when you go to a Class 5, now you start entertaining those private schools, much like what Valley is to a point, to where does moving them up to Class 5 and playing some of these private Catholic schools like your CBCs, your SLUs, Vianney's. Whenever that was brought up, I could almost envision and see something like that where Valley's playing some of these teams like this and not being looked as outclassed.
Mm. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see after the season is over and as we go into next year and look at class and district assignments, and that'll be a whole show in itself for August of 2023.
Yes, sir. Our next matchup, Brentwood at Duchesne.
This is going to be a nice Class 1 slugfest. We have 10-1 Brentwood, who we had covered earlier this season, playing against Bishop DeBerg. This is a team, their only loss was to Lift for Life, 61-6, and this was Coach Tyree. He had said the Lift for Life was a no-joke team, and they showed that in spades. But I think Brentwood's just going to be slow and methodical against Duchesne at 6-4. You say, well, that doesn't really seem to bode well, but this is another Class 1 school who beat Class 6 Vianney 50-15. They lost to MICDS, Class 5 school, 44-33. They lost to Cardinal Ritter 35-6, and they lost to St. Mary's 48-6. So when you look at three of their losses, as a 6-4 team, their four losses, three of them have been against rather impressive teams, and then along with beating a Class 6 team in the process, Jeff.
Let me say this about Brentwood. Brentwood at Class 1 and the games that we've had them on this year and the games that I've seen, they have impressed me with their defense. They've got some guys that can really lay some blows and really play physical on the defensive side, and that part has impressed me. But they haven't played anybody like Duchesne. And Ray, I'm going to go back 2 years ago to
I know
when you and Hal Neisler had the call at Duchesne where who ended up the fourth place Jefferson Blue Jays went up to Duchesne and played a very young Duchesne Pioneers team at the time, but a very good and very athletic team. Even though Jefferson came away with a pretty solid win in that game to go move on to state, you could tell from that game some of the great young athletic players that Duchesne had at the time that have gotten so much better now that they're upperclassmen and really dominant.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. You saw the development that was kind of going on. Haven't found that last gear yet, but they've definitely found it the last couple of years here. Been pretty dominant football team.
And they're another team that could move up a class.
True, very much so. Very much so. We have Rockwood Summit taking on St. Mary's. Should be a really good game there as well.
This is kind of like the sleeper game on the schedule. That you have a Summit team 10-1. Their only loss is to the Marquette Mustangs by a whopping 14-2. But from the film I'd seen on this game, this was just a knockout, drag-out fight that they gave Marquette everything they could handle and then some. Then you look at St. Mary's, who in the power rankings for most of the year has been at number 1. Their only two losses of the season. They're an 8-2 team. Their only losses came to two teams out of state, one in Illinois and one in Kentucky. They beat SLU 42-10, and they've also beaten Duchesne 48-6. So this St. Mary's team, they're not bashful about lacing up the boots as well. And I think this is just going to be one of those games, Jeff, that flies under the radar. But I think it's going to be a very hard-fought game to the end.
I do. I think that Rockwood Summit, they graduated several good players from, what Ray and I saw last year, when they hosted Eureka at home, the game we covered, and that was a great game as well.
Yeah.
But Rockwood will give St. Mary's a fight, and they'll give them great competition. Man, it's still a little bit of David versus Goliath here, though, and St. Mary's is going to. If St. Mary's plays the way they're capable of, they should win this game without any problem. But you give Rockwood Summit an inch, and they can crack that door open and make this very, very close.
I agree with that. Our last game of the Week 12 matchups here, Festus at Hillsboro, round 2.
Well, once again, this goes back to the classic, facing a team the second time. After Hillsboro knocked Festus 58-21 back in Week 5, again, Festus 4-1 in their last 5 games, but Hillsboro, with their only blemish to Cardinal Ritter, I still have to say, you got that romaine salad and that PB combo. I think that's what's going to be served up.
I love the romaine salad and the PB combo. I love that. That's I think, guys, you could see 120, 130 points scored in this game. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair, and you can cut this out. If once we go back and look, if it's like a 10-8 game or whatever, you can tell me I was wrong. But I think this could be a 70-60 game even. I think that as good as the Hillsboro defense is, Festus offense has been very dynamic, as you said. 3-1, 4-1 in their last, part of their season here, Matt. But it's going to be Hillsboro's running attack versus the Festus passing attack. And we know how good Festus or Hillsboro's linebackers are, led by Austin and Romaine. We're going to get to see how good the secondary is, led by guys like Kenyon, Stout, and and the PBs, as Matt likes to say back there. We're going to see if they can keep Branch and some of the other receivers for Festus in place. So really hard to beat a team down here, at least in Jefferson County, twice in the same season. I think it's going to be a great game. Hillsboro should have the edge at home.
Let me ask you this: that with Festus being 4-1 in their last 5, does this kind of scare you that they might be catching fire at the right time? Because when you were talking about possibly, both teams, like you could see a number of points scored in this game, I was looking at Hillsboro's defense where they're only giving up, 10, 12, 15 points a game, much kind of like what Marquette does. But is this a game where Festus kind of could scare you? Because we're talking about then a team, if you're looking to throw 30 points up on this Hillsboro defense, then Festus must either be recognizing something or they're going to break out some sort of aerial attack that is giving us the impression then that maybe they see something as a weakness in Hillsboro's defense that even Cardinal Ritter couldn't pick out.
Right, and the key to this game is going to be Hillsboro, if they can get any kind of decent pass rush against Festus. I think that Festus could put 30 points up against Hillsboro's defense and still lose the game 50-30. I really do. I do think they see some things in the Hillsboro secondary that they can exploit, but they're going to have to get the blocking up front to do so. But yeah, I would be concerned if I were Hillsboro coming into this game with Festus.
All right, so we don't do this very often, but who wins this particular game? Matt.
Again, I have to say Hillsboro till you prove me wrong.
Okay, Jeff?
Same here. They've just got one or two more weapons than Festus to worry about if you're the Tigers. So yeah, Hillsboro plays the way they're capable of. They should win at home.
Yeah, I agree.
On paper, I think that's the biggest key too. Because I was going to say that this might even have a vibe, even at Hillsboro, of being a home game for both teams. But I think if Festus was playing this game at home, I think from an odds maker standpoint, I might have given a little bit of an edge to Festus in this. But playing in the Hawks' Nest, I'd have to give the advantage to the home team.
Yeah, on paper, I think you still see Hillsboro still being that dominant running game. Festus could shock the world. Last year, I believe I gave the benefit of the doubt to Festus. I'm going to go with Hillsboro as well this year. So 3 all the way across the board for the Hillsboro Hawks, and good luck to both teams there. So we'll wrap things up here upon further review. Week 12 begins Friday, and Jeff has a question.
Before we get out of here, guys, I want to give 3 quick shout-outs, please.
Okay, here we go.
Number 1, Republic defeating Webb City in the Class 5 District 6, 30-21, snapping Webb City's string of 22 consecutive district titles.
Wow.
22.
That's a lot.
That's just amazing. So I want to talk about that. I want to give a shout-out to these guys right here.
Hey.
My Jefferson Blue Jays, the Class 2 girls volleyball state champions with the win over Herman, who Herman had won 15 of the last 17 Class 2 titles. That's shout-out number 2. Shout-out number 3 to the Jefferson College men's soccer team, who by virtue of a 1-0 victory yesterday is going to the Nationals, and they will be when the final 12 Class 1 NJCAA schools to play in the tournament down in Florida. So that will get underway this week, and we'll try to keep folks updated on our social media pages on how that's going as well.
And don't forget, they're doing that with a rookie coach as well.
Rookie coach, that's right.
There you have it.
Fantastic job over there for the Vikings.
So you're going to do shout-outs. Don't forget all of our cross-country teams here. Hillsboro, the shocker this year.
Oh, my goodness.
The number, winning the state in Class 4. Festus taking second. Herculaneum taking second. I believe that's in Class 3 as well. So we have quite a few bit of cross-country folks in the area that did really well at state this year.
In Class 4, 8 of the top 15 finishers were Jefferson County athletes. And the top 3 were all Jefferson County athletes. So it's just amazing dominance by this county and cross country. I think it's because you have to run up and down all these little hills and hollows in the county. So
there you go.
I think that makes you strong.
There you go. Kudos to everybody out there. And we're going to wrap things up here upon further review. Don't forget to check us out on our Facebook page, YouTube page, Twitter page, Twitch page at Livestream STL. We'll be out at Eureka High School this week for Mission TV. The MICDS Rams come to town to take on the Eureka Wildcats. So check that out on Mission TV. For Ray Halbrook, for Matt Bates, for Jeff Whitener, all of us here at UFR. Upon further review. So long, we'll see you down the road.